on the letters in the minutes. Go ahead and call the meeting to order. We are expecting another member. Go ahead and get started. The first matter of business is the review and approval of minutes and decision letters. I believe we've already discovered that one of the letters, the letter going to Donaldson Station for the Donaldson Station project, we caught a typo in that first paragraph, be it resolved that the owner entity needs to be, is it Donaldson Station? Okay. So if anyone else has got something figured out, let's go ahead and point those out. Here, a motion then with that correction to approve the minutes and the decision letters.
Motion to approve.
It's been a motion. Can I have a second?
Second.
Then a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, let's take a vote. All in favor of approval of the meeting minutes and decision letters from the last meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? No. One abstention. With that, we can move to the first case to be heard, which is Gibson Creek Equalization Facility. Before we get started, Penny, if you'd read into the record the statement on appeals.
Our opening statement. If you are not satisfied with the decision made by the Stormwater Management Committee, you may appeal the decision by filing for a writ of certiorari with the Davidson County Chancery or Circuit Court. Your appeal must be filed within 60 days of the date of the committee's decision. You are advised to seek the independent advice of legal counsel to assure that your appeal is filed in a timely manner and that all procedural requirements have been satisfied.
Thank you, and with that, we'll turn to staff for a description of the appeal request.
Thank you, sir. Case number 1 is 2017-00024, Gibson Creek Equalization Facility. It's located at 864 Idlewild Drive. Parcel number is 05205 016800. The inspector is Donald Irves, and this is Council District 17, Councilman Anthony Davis. The applicant's request is for uncompensated fill in the floodplain, continuous maintenance and mowing of the buffers, disturbance of the buffer areas, and a decision valid for a period of 30 days to allow Metro Water Services time to acquire necessary fundings. The appellant's Metro Water Services being represented by Sarah Hooper of Barge Cawthon and Associates. Stormwater staff comments, there was none provided. Codes also had no comments. Planning says it's a Metro government site, water pumping station, so they defer to stormwater. Greenways also defers to the Stormwater Management Committee. Thank you.
Thank you. And then Anna, thank you.
Can I recuse myself as Sarah's my coworker?
You are certainly allowed to. All right. Carrie, do you need a minute? Good. Okay. If the applicant would like to come up now and describe the project and the request.
I'm actually going to have Mr. Taylor start out and give you a little bit of the history of this project and the background as to why we're doing this.
Good morning. I'm Ron Taylor. I'm with Metro Water Services. I'm the program manager for Clean Water Nashville. Many of you probably know that Nashville's under a consent decree, an enforcement action from the U.S. EPA, from the Department of Justice, and from TDEC to reduce overflows, both from our sanitary system and our combined sewer system. This project is part of what we call the CAP-ER. This is a project to mitigate sanitary sewer overflows. The corrective action / engineering report is a report that EPA and TDEC required us to compile to mitigate sewer overflows. Whenever we've got an area like Gibson Creek where we've got overflow issues during wet weather, we went through an extensive analytical process in planning for these projects, using computer modeling to look at a combination of three things. Can we reduce flows by doing sewer rehab? Can we convey more flow in wet weather to reduce the chance of an overflow? Or in the last case, can we temporarily detain flow in wet weather so that we eliminate the overflow? In most cases, it's a combination of the three. This particular site, Gibson Creek, has 2 pumping stations that send flow to it. The problem was big enough that we could not eliminate the problem with sanitary sewer rehab alone. So we decided the most cost-effective solution is to build a storage tank. That means that for somewhere near this Gibson Creek pumping station site that exists with an overflow point, we need to put a large detention tank, somewhere in that campus area. It doesn't have to be adjacent to that pumping station, but the more remote we go from that location, the more it costs. We have to put a large force main to convey flow from the pump station to a tank and a large gravity line coming back. So the further we go away from that existing station, the more it costs us. So we decided that the most cost-effective solution is to locate it adjacent to the existing pumping station. Unfortunately, part of that property is in the floodplain. So we've got Sarah here to help us try to ease our way through that process with the least impact.
So as Ron mentioned, this site has some particular topographic hardships. The biggest one is that the site is actually entirely located within the 100-year floodplain. As you can see on that map, it's the kind of the dark orange is the limits of the FEMA 100-year elevation. Additionally, the 2-year flood elevation that we determined through regression is at 408.2. So the 100 year is at 421.2. The 2 year is 408.2 on our site, and it's shown in the darker red line, kind of the middle red line. So you can see we do have some area of the site that is above that line, but most of it is comprised of the existing pump station, which is shown plan right, and then the access drive going to it from Idlewild. And all that has been built up to be kind of as high as they could get it, but it's still within the 100-year floodplain. Also, as you can see, the property is actually, it's all oriented along Gibson Creek, and it's actually very narrow, and really the widest part of the site is near the existing sanitary pump station, and then as you go up the creek, it actually gets quite narrow. And further constricting this property is, since it is oriented along the creek, we have our floodway, and then with the floodway we have our 50-foot Zone 1 and our 25-foot Zone 2 water quality buffers, further restricting the available width to put this large tank, which is 190 feet in diameter. Part of our request is disturbance of the buffer, which you could see on, there's the tank, yep. Go to the first one, CG 1 point. Go to the one that says 1. Oh, I'm sorry, 2. There you go. So this is our grading and drainage plan that shows where we've sited the tank. And it also shows our buffer disturbance area just below the existing station. That is where the diversion structure is located. It's required to be in that location because it's intercepting the incoming sanitary sewer line. And so we're disturbing 390 square feet in the Zone 1 for this structure that is essentially a utility structure. It's just a concrete, tank that's primarily below, well, it's at the grade of the road, but it's just a tank. It's not a building. So of the 390 square feet that we're disturbing, really only 80 square feet is the structure itself. The rest of it is disturbance really during construction for our, silt fence and our temporary construction fence. And then, the third and kind of the main thing that we want to talk about is our uncompensated floodplain storage volume that we're requesting. So we're requesting 18,500 cubic yards of uncompensated fill. Of that number, about 13,500 cubic yards of this volume is located inside the tank. This is primarily tainted stormwater that has entered the sanitary sewer system through I&I during storm events. We are including that in our request for fill, but just want to point out the nature of the fill that is in the tank, that it's primarily stormwater. And the tank, actually, if you want to go to the section of the tank, there you go. I don't know if you can, hopefully you guys can see that, but the tank is being, the existing grade kind of runs through the middle of it that you can see, running down the hill. And so we're actually excavating all the way down, putting the tank on rock, which sits quite a bit below existing grade. And then, the 421 elevation is roughly in the middle of the tank. So we actually have quite a bit of storage above the 100-year elevation. That is approximately 36,000 cubic yards of additional water storage that the tank, that's comprised of the area above the 100-year elevation, and then also the area that we're excavating below. And then the remaining 5,000 cubic yards roughly that we're requesting is really due to having to also construct a wet weather pumping station to get the flow to this tank, and then the required access drives that we need to get down to it. So in our design process, looking at the existing site conditions, as Ron mentioned, this facility is being constructed to serve the existing station, so it needs to be, fairly close, really as close as possible to it in order to serve it. So you're kind of tied to where the existing station is now, and then also the access to it. And then the other kind of big constraint that we have in locating the tank, aside from the narrowness of the property to accommodate this large diameter tank, but also, we have quite a few existing utility mains running through the site that you can see on the existing conditions. One shows it pretty well, but there's a, I think it's a 16-inch water main that's a Madison Suburban line that runs, that's on the, it's north but planned left of the tank, that was really preventing us from, moving it further north. And then there's also large sanitary sewer mains that you're going to find next to a pump station and force mains and everything that really really kind of restricted where we could put this tank. And through our design, we really, another reason why it's located so close to the existing facility is that we're trying to minimize our site footprint as much as we possibly can, and our how much land we're disturbing. And then another thing with the with the wet weather pumping station that you can see kind of between the tank and then the existing station, we did some different things where we, underneath it, it's actually going to be open below. It's not a solid structure all the way down. We've left it open underneath, and even the first floor of the tank it has walls, but it has large openings. I mean, we've made it as open as we can. And then the other thing with pump station is that the electrical room and the generator deck are actually on the upper floor, this wasn't part of my design, but, is really kind of a new thing, really.
Yes.
They were willing to consider. And one thing we haven't mentioned yet, but another factor in our design process is that the properties on the plan north, those are all residences. So we're, very concerned about our proximity to them and how, this tank will impact them. So we considered a smaller diameter tank, but this would make it another 19 feet taller and be more visible to them. And it also wouldn't reduce it would only decrease the uncompensated fill volume by about 4,000 cubic yards. And it's more expensive too, I believe, right?
Slightly.
So we really tried to, it's a balance of choosing a tank diameter that's, economical, but also, if it's wider, it can be a little shorter, and it's the top of it, kind of where the dome starts, is about where the top of the existing station is. And then, the dome is another 20 feet or so taller than that. And then, part of our plan that is also to provide landscaping to screen it as much as we can from the neighbors. So that was another consideration. So our proposed mitigation is to provide, I think it's number 4, actually. There you go. So our proposed mitigation is to provide approximately 0.71 acres of reforestation of the stream buffer along Gibson Creek. And really, this area was determined from taking the edge of the existing trees and really supplementing the buffer that's there, in the area where we can't grade. And then we also, part of this project is, so Metro Water Services acquired an additional parcel, which is shown to the upper left. And this parcel was acquired with the purchase of another parcel for the project. And the purpose of this was really to be used solely for compensating floodplain volume, and also we're providing another 0.39 acres of reforestation of that property, and that's all it's used for. And it's actually adjacent to another parcel that Metro owns. That's it.
Thank you.
Sure.
At this time, let's see if there's anyone here to speak on behalf of or against the project, whether it be representatives or public. Seeing none, we'll move to questions from the committee.
Okay. I'm going to address most of my questions to Metro because this is technically a Metro project. I think you did an excellent job of explaining the design features, the impacts, and the mitigation. So I think I understand all that. I'm just trying to understand as a citizen and as a taxpayer why we're doing this, and it might benefit the larger public to understand why we're doing this as part of this discussion. So I'm going to ask some basic questions so that everybody understands what's going on. Some of these I may already know the answer to, but so just kind of backing up here, because of the consent decree, we have to stop sewer overflows. And the type of sewer overflows that this facility is managing includes stormwater.
Inadvertently. This is an area with separate sanitary sewers, but sanitary sewers don't age well. Over time, they develop cracks. You have leaks in the joints. Manholes become defective, and so in wet weather, you have extraneous water that enters the sewers through groundwater infiltration or by direct water flowing in. So the capacity then of the sewer is overwhelmed in those wet weather events, and you get some combination of extraneous water and sanitary sewage that can overflow at the low points in the system.
Yeah, that was one of the biggest surprises of a tour I gave students of our wastewater plant recently, was how much water gets in pipes that you would think are don't take in water from the outside the pipe, from the adjacent ground.
Exactly, and our preferred way to deal with those issues is to do sewer rehabilitation, to essentially create a new sanitary sewer inside an existing pipe by inserting a liner that's activated with a resin, and it bonds to the inner pipe, and you've got a brand new pipe from manhole to manhole. And that's a great way to renew infrastructure and extend the life of our facilities. However, if the problem is big enough, and in this area it is, rehabilitation alone can't totally fix the problem. So you've got to supplement that with something else, in this case, a storage tank.
Okay. So that for me, kind of settles the fact that you can't really go up into the watershed and eliminate the stormwater as part of the need for scaling this at the scale that is being designed. It's a contingency for a closed system that is very, very expensive to fix another way.
In this case, we're actually doing both. We're proposing to build a storage tank and doing sewer rehabilitation. If you don't rehabilitate the sewers in this area, for example, the tank may fill up in the wintertime and never drain because the system stays surcharged.
Yeah.
So it's got to be a combination.
Okay. So this last question, or next two questions, deal primarily with why this site is the way it is and the mitigation. Can we go to that image of the tight red lines of the 2-year floodplain, I think it was? So you were talking about how tightly those red lines are constricted. Those lines, I perceive that they're constricted primarily because of the fill of the previous construction of the site. Is that a fair statement?
I believe it actually was historical. So the parcel, really the larger parcel to the left, Metro just recently acquired that parcel from someone that whose family had owned it a long time, and it really was just kind of farmland, bottomland. So there's two red lines shown on there. One is the middle one is the 408.2, the 2-year flood elevation that, we were looking at, like, hey, because that's our, where we can compensate. And then the lower one is elevation 404. That is the elevation, the flood elevation for Gibson Creek, just, for Gibson Creek alone and not considering the Cumberland. And that was, one thing we looked at trying to minimize our fill in that area. And so the dip in it is actually where, when they built the original station, they were able to compensate at that time. They were able to compensate the volume by taking it from, that location and building up on the other side. So it's really, kind of an anomaly in the that elevation along the creek. But it's, because of the original tank construction.
So, just for the benefit of our understanding, the public, and maybe this is also the follow-up is a Metro question, is that typically these types of facilities, do they have to be located in this portion of the floodplain to operate successfully?
No. They could be located remotely from the existing pumping station. Okay. The challenge there that we saw is that you've got to have the piping that fills the tank and the piping that drains the tank. And for a size of this facility, those two pipes are on the order of $1,000 a foot. So the further you go away, much more expensive, the project becomes. The second thing is trying to find property sizable enough to locate this tank is pretty challenging in this area. One of the maps showed that's pretty heavily developed with residential property. So there are properties outside the floodplain, but likely it would mean acquiring property for existing residences, and that's really not very popular. Secondly, if you site a tank in that neighborhood, it's going to be very, very close to existing residences, the remaining residences. So because of the construction concerns, the changing of the view shed, shall we say, we really thought we'd like to avoid that if possible.
Okay, then it makes sense. Your closest site is already developed.
Right.
Uphill. So in one sense, we're having to make a bit of an ecological compromise in order to make this work cost effectively and efficiently and safely. So that brings me to the mitigation. Is the staff comfortable with the degree of mitigation versus the metrics of impact? Do y'all feel like those are appropriately offset, given the fact that you work for Metro and this is a Metro project?
They treat us no different, believe me.
I know they treat you no different, because I've seen y'all interact.
Well, there's two forms of mitigation. I won't talk about the reforestation. I'll defer to Rebecca on that. But we intentionally kind of stayed a little silent on it. But there is the benefit of removing these overflows. So there was reforestation and there was overflows, and the overflows, they are a benefit to Metro, and they are required for us to do. I'll defer to Rebecca if she wants to.
I'm done, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
What's this pond like looking structure up above the tank or to the right of the tank? What is that?
That's a bioretention.
And what elevation is that?
It's above the 10-year. It's about 415, 414, 415.
Okay. And then it looks like, so there was some field that was compensated, correct? Is that what was done with the new parcel to the left?
Yes, we were able to reduce our amount of uncompensated fill. I think it was about 4,000 cubic yards is the difference between what we were kind of originally thinking. And it's at a higher elevation. It's from 410 to, I think, 418 or so.
Why were you just limited to being able to reduce it by 4,000? Is it because of the 2-year? What's the limiting factor there?
So it's the 2-year elevation. Another thing I didn't really mention is that, outside of the water quality buffer, the land is very flat. And because it's kind of right at that, 408, 407, 408, it was really, we have graded it to get as much compensating volume as we can. We're actually grading, in between the tank and then the extra parcel we bought, we're grading that. We don't have to grade that area, but that was another area where we've tried to reduce our fill as much as we possibly could. All of our slopes are as tight as they can be, and, we've graded that area, but it's so flat, we just can't, there's just not a lot of, elevation where we can get that volume out of the site. So they did purchase the additional parcel to, get some volume out of it.
Could we see the 2010 flood?
It was cloudy over the site on that day.
Oh.
But the blue line does represent the inundation.
Where's the creek?
Yeah, where's the project?
Yeah, I can't tell what I'm looking at.
It's the two largest pieces in the middle, that aren't shaded. Mm-hmm.
So this entire neighborhood's underwater already, is that what we're saying?
Yes, sir. At staff level, Roger and I, we've been talking to the Corps of Engineers, and this is all pretty much well within the backwater of the Cumberland River. So there's a high, everybody feels confident that there's going to be no upstream or adjacent flooding issues in this area as a result of the uncompensated fill.
So we think this is a no-rise situation.
Absolutely.
Has there been a study to say that?
No.
I will. I'm Roger Lindsay, and I don't have much voice today. I want to call your attention to this map. These properties along Yale Avenue, Metro purchased and demolished homes on 5 of those properties. Harvard Avenue down here, while these are platted lots, Harvard Avenue was never built, and most of these properties are in a situation where they would have to be elevated 10 to 15 feet to meet our floodplain ordinance before you could build a house. So it's deep in the floodplain. It is a wide, expansive floodplain, but it's an odd floodplain from the perspective that when you look at the flood maps, the base flood elevation, the flood map, the outline of the special flood hazard area, as we call it, is defined by the backwater of the Cumberland River, which at this point is 421 feet. The floodplain along Gibson Creek is defined by the modeling of Gibson Creek and its tributaries. So it's a much narrower floodway. And the traditional model that we do to create a no-rise scenario or an answer to that question, like we did on Richland Creek, where we were looking at equalization basins along Richland Creek. That was a major creek flowing down the side of a site, and in the actual no-rise evaluation, we determined that there was some water backing up behind those tanks, affecting a neighborhood located behind those tanks. In this case, you can't do a traditional model on this because the components of this flood map are defined by those 2 different scenarios, what's coming down Gibson Creek. And the thing that's interesting about this is that when the Corps of Engineers runs their models, the Corps likes to model the creek coming down at the 100-year event, but they also like to model coming into the Cumberland River, for example, at a 10-year event. So that you acknowledge that if there's a major storm event that's creating this flood in Gibson Creek, that it's also impacting the Cumberland River. When the Corps sends that model to FEMA, FEMA's protocol says, no, we're going to model Gibson at 100 years, but we're going to model that same model, we're going to model as though the Cumberland was at normal pool. And so the result of that is that it narrows the floodway in that lowest reach of Gibson Creek. So it's a very challenging modeling scenario, and fortunately we have the close access to the Nashville District Corps, Barry Moran and the H&H group. He and I were on the phone actually last night, and he's done some modeling that's not accessible through the normal. If you were to call FEMA and say, I need to model on this creek, you wouldn't get what Barry Moran is running at his desk. So Barry's conclusion last night, as we looked through the effect of flow coming down Gibson Creek with respect to the flow in the Cumberland River or the height of the water in the Cumberland River under some flood scenario, whether it's a 10-year event or a 100-year event, that we've got an expansive enough, in his words, the Cumberland is overpowering to the model at this location. And you consider, too, that as you model down the reach of the Cumberland River, we're talking about a site that's located sufficiently far up Gibson Creek as to not really be impacted by models that are looking at flows and elevations along the Cumberland River. So it's not a typical no-rise kind of a scenario, but Barry, he's actually doing some additional HECRAS runs this morning for me, but his word to me last night was that there would be no significant impact on the water in either of these scenarios along Gibson Creek or the Cumberland River.
Or upstream.
Right.
Yeah, this is an old issue for me, and I just want to be consistent in the way I talk about it and the way I vote on it. It has nothing to do with the design. I think it's been designed as with the right technical parameters and with the right specifications to to work with the given site and the given constraints. The mitigation is appropriate to staff. The uncompensated fill, that's a Metro or a site developer responsibility that they communicate to their design team to either deal with or not deal with. And so that's not being, you all were not asked to mitigate or to compensate the fill, I take it.
No, I mean, this is not the first, tank that they've built. I think he said there was built 8, and there's, some other ones that are under design and construction. I believe this is the first time that it's just been on a site where we haven't been able to compensate for that volume. So we went into this, their general policy is absolutely, we need to compensate for this fill that we're generating. But, on this particular site, we, kind of from the very beginning, we went into it knowing that it wouldn't be possible. So, we were just directed to minimize that as much as we could.
So to go back to Roger's point, and, that was an incomplete characterization of the situation by me, so now I'll try to make it complete. I think what Roger just said was because of this unique hydrological environment, he's confident that there would be a no rise.
Right.
That's not my concern. I think most people don't know that we're regulating one type of flood in one type of circumstance. And we've chosen not to regulate the bigger floods. That doesn't mean that this is not going to impact people in other flooding situations just because the regulated flood doesn't create a rise. And so the concern that I perennially come back to is that if you're not compensating for the fill, you're putting other people in a situation where in unregulated flood events, they're going to experience impacts. The only reason I say this is that several times we've had different proposals come before the board. The board has routinely voted in the majority, and I was in the minority, on allowing uncompensated fills in situations where experts testified that there would be no rise. But that doesn't compensate for the unregulated impacts. And, I know it's kind of hard for us to get our head around it, but if we can avoid not making it worse in unregulated environments and situations, we probably should. If we can't, if it's unavoidable, we make these kinds of compromises all the time with the construction of highways, with the development of communities, with the installation of infrastructure and power lines. We make these kind of decisions all the time, and it's often the best we can do. I personally would just rather see Metro come up with a policy eventually of compensating for fills. That's just my personal individual board member position, because I think it's fair. I think it should be, I think this is one thing we ought to address down the road, but that's just me.
Mr. Chairman, can I add a couple items?
Please.
So, you're right. We actually had other projects where we have purchased property for the sole purpose of floodplain compensation. And we've had other projects, I think Richland Park, where they have an equalization tank already there, that they want to expand and do a few more. And something similar happened where they were doing uncompensated fill, and during the internal discussions and evaluations, we determined that there was going to be a rise over there, and they backed out of the additional tanks in that situation. So you're absolutely right. We do buy property, not me personally, but Metro Water does buy property, for purposes of, cutting and just for the sole purpose of cutting when available. And we do, believe it or not, we do scrap projects and try to relocate them when there is a fear of a rise or impact on other neighbors too.
But that's not your concern.
In this case, it looks like the discussions with the Corps of Engineers is that it was pretty solid that they were really thinking that there was going to be no impacts whatsoever.
And just to put this in context, to me, this is like, this is storage of flood water that taxpayers enjoy for free. And we'll manage it up to the regulated limit, but we're not going to mitigate it above the regulated limit. It's just like selling an abandoned school site at a low price instead of a fair price to the taxpayer, because the taxpayer owns the value. If you give away the value, it's gone. And I think that's something Metro Council will eventually need to maybe consider or want to consider. But I would admit that it's outside of our regulatory purview today. I just think somebody should be stating that public policy concern. And I'm going to vote no just because of the uncompensated aspect. All the other aspects I'm very comfortable with. So.
Roger, yeah, so I want to make sure I understand what Barry's saying. What I hear is doing a typical no-rise study doesn't make sense because that would go to FEMA, and FEMA would look at it differently. They wouldn't consider, when they're looking at Gibson Creek, they would not combine that with analysis of a storm also occurring on the river. So they wouldn't consider the backwater effect of the Cumberland.
Right, they didn't in the modeling of the final models as issued in maps in April of this year, of this past year.
But looking at it from more, and I understand what FEMA does or doesn't do certain things because they're regulations and it's got to do with insurance. But what Barry's saying is that in an actual storm event, it's the Cumberland that's going to the Cumberland backwater is actually what's going to causing the actual flood elevation, whatever it is.
That's what causes the 421 flood that defines that entire basin, is backwater from the Cumberland. And one of the points I think we didn't make is that the large, 18,000 is a large number.
Yeah.
But that's at the 421 level created by that backwater scenario. If you used a flat earth scenario where the Gibson Creek flows down and then flows off a cliff, and all you were doing was modeling Gibson Creek with no consideration of the Cumberland River, then you'd be looking at a much lower.
The elevation wouldn't be as high, so the volume wouldn't be.
And the amount of uncompensated fill is below 1,000 cubic yards.
Yeah,
isn't it?
it's like 700 or 800 cubic yards, right, in that scenario.
7,800.
7 or 800, 7 to 800.
And that's after
Less than 1,000.
the compensated, the compensation that you're
That base flood elevation that you're modeling against is just much lower.
Right.
When you don't consider backwater from the Cumberland coming back up the creek.
And I guess what I'm asking is that number after considering the cut that you're doing in the left or before?
Before. But the cut that we're doing on the additional parcel is at a higher elevation. It starts at 410 just because of the topography. And we can't cut any lower because of, well, we could, but we would be impacting the water quality buffers if we went lower with it. So we could compensate for all of it, but we would be impacting the water quality buffers at that point.
Why is that the policy reason, to leave the buffers in place? I mean, we prefer to have uncompensated fill as opposed to the buffers?
Well, so that's a very tricky question, and I'm sitting here, I'm looking at Michael on the other side, who looks a lot on the water quality buffers, and I sit over here as an engineer, and so that's really up for you guys to decide of whether you want to say, this is a great mix, this is a great balance, and we're going to go this way, or no, we want you to go into the floodway and cut additional areas out and disturb what's already out there. I'm assuming that's something that you guys have to take up upon yourself and make that determination.
Well, I guess my question is that there was a decision to go this route. And so what's the basis for the thought process?
I guess what occurs to me is that over the years, there's just become a respect for the buffer to think that it would be considered mitigative to maintain it versus something like uncompensated fill in a basin like the Cumberland that has a larger scope to it, so to speak. But I don't think necessarily there would be anything to preclude that. I mean, it would just be another variance request. But I think, in all the cases that we deal with, first and foremost, people are looking to stay out of the buffer as much as they can because that's their primary consideration.
Maybe it's just because it's another request.
Well, the buffer is closest to the fastest moving water within the floodway, so it's hard to stabilize it once you tear it up. That's I used to manage soil conservation projects, and the one thing you never want to do was to tear up a spot that water naturally ran if you didn't have to. And if you did tear it up, you only wanted to scrape off minimally the stuff that was there and not disturb anything below, or that would be fractured and wash away easier. But I do think it's a very fair question you're asking, Mr. Chair. 800 cubic yards, and I've made this same comment before, times 100 on 100 different sites, 100 variances with 800 cubic yards is 80,000 cubic yards in our watershed that are taking up flood storage that used to be there for free. So I just wish there was a better way to do it.
May I add one more item? This floodplain storage, these tanks are actually filling up with the storage that would have been in the creek. So by doing it, there is an indirect, which is funny because I was telling them not to mention this, and here I am mentioning it. So there is an indirect. I don't know how much it is, but there is an amount that would be in the floodplain that's no longer in the floodplain that's in the tank.
And what's left over is 700 or 800 cubic yards, right?
That was neglected.
Or is it a net?
The 800 cubic yards, that scenario doesn't account for anything inside the tank. I mean, that 800 cubic yards assumes that the tank is a solid mass, and it's not accounting for anything that's actually inside,
with no
inside
stormwater
the
inside
tank.
whatsoever.
Right,
I
yeah.
thought I understood her to say earlier that when the tank filled with stormwater, it was accounting for about half of the uncompensated fill.
That is correct.
Okay.
And then in addition to that, it is half the uncompensated, more than half of it's 13,000 of the 18,000 we're asking for. But, in addition, we're excavating, we're creating storage, and it's just inside the tank. And we have had this conversation with Steve on, other, in the past, and, have kind of tried to push that point. In this case, we decided not to make that argument. I mean, we're letting you know what's inside the tank, but we're including that amount in our request. We're not choosing to fight that, but it is worth noting what that fill is. And most of that fill is stormwater, primarily stormwater. So, inside the tank, we're excavating the existing ground, well below the existing level. So we're actually creating some storage in that area. And then we also have, because it's a closed tank with, a really high overflow, we actually have more storage, above the 421 level, but we're not accounting for that in our 18,500 request. Does that make sense?
Is what you're excavating former fill that was put there to create the current site?
No.
Okay, so
No.
that's...
No, it's...
Well, the question is, as staff, do you think it's compensated completely? That's the question. Is the fill completely compensated?
I can't. I do not know. It's because the amount of the I&I, unless Ron knows, it's tough, and that's why when we have these discussions, we just say, let's play it safe, let's be conservative with it, and exclude as much as we can out of it and not consider it.
Roger, in Barry's analysis, so the backwater, once it gets up there, it's such a vast area that the amount of volume that's taken away isn't going to cause a rise that gets to 0.1 or whatever that significant number is? Is that the thought process? I mean, I'm just trying to think through in my head exactly why that's all occurring.
Yeah, and I think it has to do primarily with the floodplain along Gibson Creek. We know that the floodplain across the river is vast. It's the whole Pennington Bend area, and multiple neighborhoods that have been built over the years in Pennington Bend are deep in the floodplain.
So once you
There's
consider...
a wide expanse of floodplain as you come around that bend of the river.
Right. So I guess what I'm saying is, once you consider the Cumberland, it's so vast that taking away this
In
much...
his words, the Cumberland River overpowers the model at this point relative to...
And that's why the Cumberland should be considered. And at that point in time, at that cross-section,
Right.
you've got such a vast area that you're not going to see a significant rise. And I understood, Sarah, that the 800 was the amount of uncompensated fill if you're only considering the floodway elevation that would be generated by the Gibson Creek analysis.
The floodplain, yeah.
Floodplain,
Yeah,
yeah.
we're not impacting the floodway, but yeah, the floodplain, yeah, I know.
I've been out of the business so long, I get the words confused now.
Yeah, yes, the floodplain elevation of 404 for Gibson Creek.
Okay. I'm sorry.
I said, I think you met the legal standard of the decision. I mean, that's unavoidable.
Wait a minute, questions from the committee? We have a motion from the committee?
I make a motion to approve the variance.
We've got a motion to approve the variance. We'll hear a second to motion to a second on the motion. We've got a second to approve the variance. Do we want any internal discussion on the motion? Seeing none, let's take a vote. All those in favor of approving the motion, say aye. Aye. All those against?
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Yeah. Got one. Todd. The motion passes. Approval. Variance is granted. Thank you very much.
If you would, just make a note in the minutes that the no vote was based on uncompensated fill. The fact that it couldn't be empirically documented, that there was no uncompensated fill. That's all.
All right. We've got Anna back, and I believe it's time to hear the second matter. If the applicant would like to come up, sit at the table. And the first question I have just for the applicant, were you here when we read the statement in the very beginning of the meeting?
Yes.
Okay, so you've heard the statement. Okay, you're good with that. And that's the writ of certiorari statement, and you're right to appeal. Okay, great. So knowing that we've confirmed that, then we'll go ahead and turn to staff for a description of the variance request.
The next case on the agenda is 2018-00001, Westmead Farms. The address is 132 Haverford Drive and 134 Haverford Drive. The APN numbers are 116-130H00100C0 and 116-130H00200C0. The inspector is Kimberly Hayes. This is Council District 23, Mina Johnson. The applicant's request is to allow the following: disturbance of the 75-foot floodway buffer, 30-foot Zone 1 and 20-foot Zone 2, to allow the construction of a privacy fence, to allow continuous mowing and maintenance of the 75-foot floodway buffer, 30-foot Zone 1 and 20-foot Zone 2 of the existing, up to existing utility easement along the rear of the property. The appellant is Wiggs Thompson from Cadence Construction. The representative is Clay Wallace from Energy Land and Infrastructure LLC. Staff comments: if the The variance is approved. Staff requests that the species diversity is increased so that no species comprises more than 20% of the native trees proposed. Codes had no comment provided. Planning site is zoned R20, defer to Stormwater for review, and Greenways defers to Stormwater Management Committee comments.
Thank you. At this point, we'll turn it over to the applicant.
Hi, I'm Clay Wallace with ELI. The applicant is proposing to construct 2 homes on this lot, and the variance requested is to construct a privacy fence along the lot lines back to the existing utility easement, and also to maintain the buffer back to the existing utility easement. The structures themselves and the bioretentions are outside of the buffers. We're proposing 10 trees to be planted along inside the buffer. Where we've shown they may need to be moved a little bit based on some smaller existing trees that the survey didn't pick up. But that's 1 tree per 1,000 square feet of buffer disturbance and 1 tree per 100 linear feet of buffer disturbance because of the fence. That's all.
Thank you. Is there anyone here to speak on behalf or opposed to the project? Public or representatives? Seeing none. With that, we'll entertain questions from the committee. I'd start off, can we see a Google picture of the property as exists? Okay, you already showed it to us, so it's developed now?
Yeah, there is an existing house on there.
And the purpose of wanting the privacy fence, is that strictly because you're now placing 2 homes on the lot?
Do we have an example of what the privacy fence looks like? I mean, would it allow flow through the fence? Will it constrict flow when water comes out of the creek?
They're proposing a 6-foot, wooden privacy fence. I mean, it allows some flow through. I mean, it's not going to be completely watertight.
Are you cutting any mature trees to install the fence?
To install the fence, we don't anticipate. We're showing on the plan the mature trees that were picked up on the survey.
And I think you've been in front of us before.
I have.
And I remember projects that you brought that stayed out of both buffers, or at least you did some fairly creative designs, as I remember, to stay out of buffers in the past. Mm-hmm. Okay, I thought I remembered you coming here before.
Yeah, we pushed we were able to pull and kind of configure the bioretention so that they stayed out of the buffers completely on these.
As well as the houses.
As well as, yes, more importantly, the houses.
More importantly, the houses. That's what I remember about just keeping the houses out of the buffers. So, okay. I think maybe our realtors here would have a better idea if this is a good thing or not. So, but yeah, but it my only concern is for the homeowner that the creek's going to get out and knock the fence down. But it doesn't sound like it's going to remove mature trees. It doesn't sound like the kind of thing that prevents more tree planting in the buffer. Are you asking for to keep the border around the fence nearest to the creek mowed and clean all the time, or is there the opportunity for it to grow up? You're not asking for a variance to keep it cleared all the time?
No, we are. We're asking for continuous mowing.
Yeah.
All the way up to the fence?
Of the backyard, all the way, yes.
Okay, well, that's different. Okay.
Which is the way it's being maintained now, or was previously being maintained.
Okay. So your tree planting is to offset the construction of something, a fence in the buffer, you're going to put more trees than they're there now. It's already being mowed. I don't know how we could ask for more than that, frankly. Minimal disturbance, yeah.
And just for clarification, are you just going to mow up to the fence, or are you going to mow on the other side of the fence?
We're just proposing to mow up to the fence.
So there will be an area between the stream and the fence that it will be made unmowed?
Right, the utility easement, the existing utility easement,
And approximately how wide is that?
20 feet.
20 feet.
20 feet total, 10 foot on each side?
It's actually 20 feet back to the property. The creek runs just inside the property line, so it's a little bit more onto these properties.
And they are mowing it all the way to the creek now.
It appears so from the pictures I took. So that you can see the top of banks in the plans. They do that 20 foot is almost completely on these properties.
Is the fence going to go parallel to the creek, or is it?
It
just
will.
going- Okay.
Could we go back to that picture a minute ago where it showed the lot lines on the Google map? What are the red boxes to the, is that where someone else has already come in and put in two houses?
Yes, they have been constructed.
They have not been?
They have been.
And what did they do with their backyard?
It appears to be maintained. I looked for a variance and didn't see one. I don't know but from all indications when I was out there, it's being maintained.
When do we know when those houses were built?
They're fairly new. I don't know exactly when, but they're fairly new.
That one flew under the radar.
Well, what part of the development is in the buffers there? I'm missing that.
It doesn't have to be. They're mowing their buffers.
So, okay, because it's developed.
And so what they did is they stayed out of it so they wouldn't have to ask for any variance, and then there's no one that knows that they're even mowing their buffers because they're continuing to do what they did.
Okay. I forgot about that part.
I'm relatively familiar with the area. I mean, does anyone else have privacy fences up and down this? In this immediate area? I know it's creek.
You'll have to, I've only been out there a couple of times just to take pictures and look around. I really haven't driven around the area that well.
I know there's some fences over there. I don't know, where exactly, but yeah, there's definitely fencing around some of those lots.
Back to the creek? That's where I don't really care about other places.
I hate to give you a definite answer and not know for sure.
No, I appreciate that.
Are you the homeowner?
Yes, sir, I own it, Cadence Construction.
Okay. Would you be willing to plant more trees behind the fence on the creek?
That's in the utility easement.
Right.
Okay. That's. I think that's why it's clear, because of the utility line. Yeah. All right.
Why are you concerned that they're on the other side of the fence? I mean, you can be inside the fence if you're just talking about trees, right?
Ideally, you want to require compensation for what's being disturbed, so the fence is a disturbance. So the question is how many trees and where should they be placed to compensate for the disturbance? A fence is a disturbance to a hydrologic regime. It's not a huge disturbance, but it's trees are much more ideal outside of the utility right of way.
I thought part of the goal was to reclaim buffer, and so this is an opportunity to reclaim buffer.
That's kind of what I'm getting at.
Okay.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm getting at. But how can someone show us how wide, where the utility right of way maintenance line intersects with where the fence is going to be and where the buffers are? Do we have that?
The fence appears to be going on the utility easement line, is that correct?
It's going right up to.
Right up to it.
So are the trees that you're planning on planting inside the fence going to be also inside the utility easement?
They will not, no. The fence goes right up to, but not into the easement.
And I think would you be willing to plant more trees inside the fence to compensate for the loss of restoration opportunities like Mr. Chairman was referring to?
How many trees are we talking? Two trees. I mean, right now we've got 5 trees on either, and the backyards are fairly treed already. So they're smaller, so that's why they didn't get picked up. It could be done. It's just it may be a little tough to fit them in.
Okay. What if we did this, Mr. Chair? What if we had just had staff to work with them on an optimal, mutually agreed tree planting plan, and then move ahead?
Is there any value to putting the fence in front of the trees?
I don't think the fence makes a difference. I mean, the water's going to flow under the fence. The fence just the reason we've been concerned with fences is that if you put a fence through a buffer, then it's going to allow the owner to maintain the buffer without anybody realizing what they're doing. And so, I mean, that's why you don't want fences. I mean, this isn't a flow thing because the water comes down. From an environmental standpoint, it comes down and just goes under the fence.
Well, that's what I meant. If they put it in front of the trees, and that would not be maintained.
Yeah, I mean, in the past, I think what we would make them do is come up here and we'd let them go into, we'd make them put the fence on the zone 2 line, and we'd make that, and tell them not to touch the back. I think that's what we've done. I know that's inconsistent with what's going on in this neighborhood. I just don't, I mean, my problem is I'm wrestling with what's the hardship. They can develop the property. It's not going to be, you're probably going to lose some value on the resale because you don't have a big backyard. That's the issue.
Yeah, I mean, I think the hardship, in my opinion, is you've got other houses that are being maintained, even the backyard's being maintained, even the one adjacent to it, and now you're basically going to be letting it grow almost up to the house.
Yeah, I agree. It's inconsistent with the neighborhood. I'm not sure it's a hardship on your property, but it is inconsistent with what everyone else is doing.
Mm-hmm.
How would you feel about putting the fence on the zone 1 line instead of as far back as you're proposing? And mowing the zone 2?
My guess would be at that point in time, they'd rather get rid of the fence.
It'd be right there. I mean, would you rather have a fence?
Yeah, I think that kind of defeats the purpose of the fence.
Yeah, I think they'd probably just not build the fence. But I think they'd still like to be able to maintain the buffer.
So it sounds like you want the fence definitely on the right and the left sides. Do you need it on the back? Can you just leave it open?
As a homeowner, for me, the concern would be that now you're providing access to your backyard without anybody,
Your dog would get out.
Yeah.
I assume you also mean to put a fence in between the 2 houses.
That's correct.
We've had someone have to come back for that. Yeah.
I agree with Dodd's original. Let them work with staff as far as the planting. It's a minimal disturbance, and if they can mitigate it.
So that's one alternative. The other alternative is just, are there any other fences in the neighborhood anywhere near this house?
I couldn't say.
It doesn't look like there are. how big of a deal is it to have the fence? I mean, that's really the reason you're here, right?
Right.
No, the reason they're here is because they're going to mow the.
And the mowing too.
Yeah, I mean, that's,
But
we let people put fences through them. It's the mowing that's,
But not a lot of people come here just for mowing.
that's because people don't, that's because it's like the house next door, it flew under the radar.
And no
one's gone out there to do it, but they're not supposed to be mowing it.
I agree totally.
In fact, they probably are supposed to have the signs up too. I don't know how that particular, and do we not have that? Why are we not being asked for a variance from the sign? Is that in there?
They want to put the signs up.
Oh, they are going to put the sign? You plan on putting the signs up? Say I bet it's not, that's falling through too.
I mean, we could put the signs up. It's going to, I'd assume they'd be on the outside along the
You could post them, you could actually post them on the back of the house.
That's true.
Well, here's the deal. You know, if we go back to the original premise of enhancing the buffer by the opportunity of development, because that's what's triggering the action here, then a fence with mitigation is better than no fence and unregulated or regulated unenforced mowing.
Well, I think you still have, I mean, the mowing and maintenance, they will not be able to do after they redevelop unless they get the variance. So it will come down to enforcement. If you guys don't pass it, they could mow the last 20 feet adjacent to the house. Then the 50 feet beyond that, they couldn't mow. And then it's just
I think that's what I'd like
up to staff
see.
going back periodically to making sure that they're not doing the maintenance.
I will note that the fence there is probably the only real chance that this buffer has to grow up along the creek, because we do not have the staff to enforce single-family residential buffers. Although we might look into the next-door neighbor's house.
Yes. Yes.
You know what I love most about this board is that we all bring our individual expertise, and then we cook a great recipe, I think, in many cases. And I think that's probably the best compromise, what you just said.
And what was that compromise?
Mow the 25-foot buffer and leave the zone 1.
So make them put the signs up along that zone 1 line and allow them to maintain the last 25 foot. Is that the zone 2? I always get the.
It'd be a 20-foot zone too, but then if that's the way you're leaning, then there's no variance. Because if you say they could mow and maintain the last 20 feet, they're already allowed that right anyway. So if you say you can mow and maintain that last 20, but not beyond that, then.
So they're allowed to maintain zone 2?
They're allowed to maintain zone 2. Just no impervious areas in the zone 2, but they're allowed to cut the grass.
I think what she was saying is the fence will allow the buffer to be undisturbed because the fence would stop you from mowing up to the creek. Is that correct?
Well, the utility easement's going to be maintained always because there's sewer and power back there. I mean, that's.
With the exception of grass.
Yeah.
Is better than mowing it.
Yeah.
Sorry. With the exception of grass, which is better than mowing it. So
we saw that picture right now. What do you think the property owners actually mow all the way up there? I would think that they do. Where utility, once it's just utility, they're just going to bush hog it.
They'll periodically bush hog, but more likely they'll just come in and limb some of the trees.
I know this is going to sound heretical, but I've routinely voted against putting signs in residential yards because I think that the buffer properly landscaped will be the signal that this should be left alone. If it's beautiful, if it has an aesthetic, if it's got a fence to encourage less mowing. So I would also support the variance for the removal of the sign requirement. the fence, the staff, and developer mutually agreed landscaping, and be comfortable with it.
And I think we could work with staff, to maybe add some understory back there that could stop, where they're going to mow up to then.
To me, signs are really critical in commercial zones where you have temporary paid help. They need that extra notice not to mow. I realize that's part of the ordinance. That's why I said it's a heretical comment for me to suggest that. But
the reason it's included for residential is this is going to be the final occupant of the property, and it may even change hands a couple times, and those subsequent owners don't usually know there's a buffer there, and they're going to mow it all the way down to the creek, is our experience in these matters.
so you do have the option of an aesthetic sign, not an ugly sign. Just trying to help you out. You're looking for a motion, Mr. Chairman?
Anyone can raise one if they like.
I want to make you happy, so I'm gonna offer a motion. So I move that we grant the variance with the following conditions. That the applicant be required to work with staff on a vegetative plan for the Zone 1 portion of the buffer that will be more representative of a healthy riparian buffer, and that they landscape it in such a way to minimize mowing in the Zone 1, and that they are allowed to build the fence and can choose a sign that is mutually agreeable with staff as meeting the regulation and the aesthetic needs of the site.
Heard a motion. Is it possible for the movement to provide a justification for the granting of variance? Could you give us your justification?
That the fence enhances the opportunity for the buffer to be partially restored. That in the past we have allowed landscaping in the Zone 1, as I remember it, to create spongy additional pervious surfaces, which mowing typically doesn't optimize, and to add significantly more vegetation, riparian vegetation that is aesthetic than otherwise exists and otherwise would be put in place, and for the reason that they're not removing any current mature trees.
Thank you. There's been a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
There's been a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none. Take a vote. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. The motion passes.
And for a little bit of clarification, so that when staff is working with them, are we looking for just more of a mixture of species, canopy, and understory? And okay, thank you.
That's consistent with the previous optimizations.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, those are the two cases to be heard today. So we'll move to items of business, and we're going to discuss the proposed meeting protocol procedures, and there's a paper in our packet we have here, and I assume, Steve, you're going to talk about this?
Sure thing. So we had an old protocol that was approved by the committee, we'll say a decade or so ago. It was pretty archaic and it wasn't being followed. So we had brought it up and said, this is the protocol that's been approved from way back when. Shall we continue to use it, or shall we consider other options? And I believe the committee overwhelmingly said, no, we don't like it, let's consider other options. So we've played with procedures. We've looked at your request, and I think I may have suggested it too, at other agencies' meetings, such as like Planning Commission, and we try to model something as similar as possible to that. I did the best I can to articulate what I think you guys wanted to see on the procedures, and this is my first stab at it, and if you like it, great. If not, I will be happy to adjust whatever items you want or switch as you so please.
Thank you. Thanks for your work on this. I think this is helpful for the applicants, especially applicants that don't typically come before the board, to have this online where they can see what to expect.
One question I would have towards the end, if you like something like this, I guess the $1 million question is, if we do a 2-minute or a 10-minute or a 5-minute, whatever that time limit is, would you like a buzzer, a clock with that timer, or do you want to do it informally, or? We will borrow or purchase as you wish.
I have a question. What has been the average, I guess, time allowed that applicants have spoken?
In most cases, it seems very minimal. You will see coming up, we have some, we'll say, Fontanella-ish type items that usually tend to take a little bit longer, and they tend to attract a little bit more crowd in support and in opposition. So the majority of the time, I think everything falls within the protocols, within suitable time limits.
Is Webster considering Fontanella a new word for next year?
I think in most cases, it's the time that people speak are very suitable. There are some cases that go beyond that, and most of all, what we had up there was just not being followed or deemed suitable, so that's why the changes came about.
I do think, though, that if we're going to set the precedence, we probably need to time it. Excuse me, because if the time comes when someone's not following it, we don't have any way to, challenge that because we haven't timed it in the past.
I think it's a valid question. My concern is that what kind of constraints and added, once we start being so strict, then you're not only adding time, and you're adding complexity and difficulty in running the meeting. It's more formal. The applicants aren't going to feel as comfortable. So you're doing all of that, and then what's the goal? The goal is to make sure later on we don't have an issue where we can't enforce it. In my time here, we've never had that issue. So I think it's kind of a weighing.
So do we want to, so most cases, they would get 10 minutes, and then clearly it seems like this committee has heard some that take a lot longer.
A lot, yeah.
Is that at the beginning then, though? Do we need to formalize like the request for the extension of time? The applicant needs to make that in the beginning, like, hey, we know this is going to take more than 10 minutes. I mean, do we want to go ahead and set, like, you need to request the extension of time and have the applicant do that, or is that something?
Seems like they should do it at the beginning.
Yeah.
I think they would probably talk to staff about it beforehand as well, if they would be on notice of the rule. They would have an opportunity so staff might have a sense of how large the case is going to be and whether it would be one that really would merit an extension. I was also going to say, though, sometimes a lot of the discussion is not so much in the initial presentation, it's in response to questions that the committee members ask after the presentation had been made, and these time limits would not apply to that.
That's a good point.
So in most cases, like for Planning Commission items, what they will do is they will have the timer, they will look at it, they'll stop 3 minutes, 4 minutes short of their allotted time, and they will say at that time, we wish to reserve 2 minutes for rebuttal at that time. After all this is done, if the committee does have questions, that's my understanding too, is you're at your liberty to ask whatever questions you like at any time you like.
And there's no constraints on the applicant as far as time limits for responding?
As long as you're asking questions, I think they're free to answer.
That's where most of the time takes place, is answering those questions. So.
One thing I've noticed in testimonies and in the past, this doesn't seem to be nearly as much a problem since we started televising these, is that previous applicants seem to think that there were reasons for making their case for their variance that had nothing to do with the regulations or even why they were here. They would talk about how they were helping the local economy or how they were supporting a particular community initiative, and it's really the issues of the variance that are most applicable.
I believe that's up to the chair to try to get them, if they're running on tangents, to align them back into.
Yeah, I don't think it needs to be stated here. But I think, as the chairman was saying earlier, we haven't had a problem with needing to limit people on time. It's really about efficiency. Do we have to be here 3 hours or do we have to be here 2 hours? Or if we're efficient, we can save the taxpayers a little bit of staff time and let them go on to the next task after this hearing is over if we can do it more efficiently. So, but the primary goal is for people to experience proper due process and to have a hearing of their peers for a variance request. And so there is a careful balance there.
And I don't think having these rules, and I'll defer to legal, but I don't think these rules will affect that the chairman can't suspend the rules on specific cases to allow more public comment or additional time. Would that be fair? Or
I think it's a little more complicated than that. I'm assuming what you're proposing is that we would actually add these rules to the internal operating rules and regulations. And so the process for amending those, it says these rules may be amended at any time by a majority of the members of the committee and shall be in writing and filed in the office of the Metropolitan Clerk.
Do we have to follow that procedure, or can we just generally agree this is going to be our general protocol and approve it to be put on the website?
You can amend that rule about how to amend the rules if you want to, as long as you follow the process.
And one alternative is, maybe this is a council question, is to explicitly add language in this protocol that the chair has a discretion to extend time.
That's a good idea as well.
I would support that.
So for consistency, so everybody who speaks first is given a time limit, with the exception of the Metro Council member. Maybe we don't want to put a limit on them, but.
Well, that's the one we should put a limit on.
That's what I was thinking. They might get off into the stuff that's not applicable. Should they also be provided a
Talk about that off the record.
time limit?
I think having a time limit forces people to think about what they're going to talk about and make it organized.
And it's consistent. It follows the programs.
We got a 2-sentence case today.
I would also say, as we work with people, sometimes they come to us about a future project and they state that they would like to make a presentation to the committee. And I think it would be really good to tell them, well, then you should be looking at a 10-minute window to make your presentation. Sometimes I feel when people come in with a very robust presentation, they feel the need to want to cover all the points. So.
All their
So, Mr. Chairman, were you suggesting on number 6 that I limit that to 2 minutes also, or just leave it as is, or?
think we should leave it as is. I think they'll get offended.
So I'm going to propose language to give the chair the discretion. Steve, where do you think is the best place to put that?
Add 9.
Number 9.
Number 9. Okay, that's what I was headed towards. I just like even numbers, so that's my anal retentive personality on this issue. But so number 9, the chair has the discretion to extend time to all parties as appropriate for the case.
I would say to extend time or modify this general protocol as the circumstances as the chair deems appropriate based on the circumstances of the matter. Chair, you good with that? And then I do want to just change the title to General Meeting Protocol as opposed to Procedures.
Is this something we can track for a couple meetings to see? Because I'm not sure that the presentation today was less than 10 minutes.
We can
That's
change
what I was
this.
thinking.
Yeah, I mean, all we got to do is have another one of these meetings and change the rules and vote again. So that's all we'd have to do.
So I'd hate for it to create a thing and not know really what the time frame is, and then find out that everyone's running over and we didn't anticipate that.
And the chair's got the power, so if you don't like what I'm doing, you can just kick me out.
Mr. Chair, you're doing a great job.
I did have this protocol done 2 meetings ago, and I did cross-check it at the last 2 meetings to make sure that, I didn't miss anything where everything's falling in line. So
Yeah,
exactly
the
what you're
procedure itself seems exactly what we're doing and outlines it. It's just, I wasn't sure if 10, like this guy's, was more than 10 minutes when they presented, because I didn't really have a sense of time, and
Yeah.
It seemed like he was about to stop after 20 seconds. But, yeah.
He would have if I would have let him. I just remain silent.
oh, not this,
A little deposition.
the Metro Water case, I meant.
Yeah.
With those changes, so adding 9 on the chair's authority to modify and changing the title, I would make a motion to approve and adopt this protocol.
Can we clarify when the extension should be requested in number 3? Or do you all not think that's necessary?
I think that, I can't remember who it was, but someone mentioned probably maybe staff. Should you put that responsibility on staff? So that when staff's explaining, I think that's a good idea.
No, it does give the committee itself the authority to grant or withhold the granting of the extensions. I was just saying, hopefully the applicants would be courteous enough to talk to staff beforehand and say, hey, by the way, this is a really big one. We're going to need more than 10 minutes to make our presentation. And then, staff would have a chance to form an opinion as to whether that's a valid request or not. So just so that you all wouldn't be kind of blindsided by it.
So it doesn't have to be written into here. Staff needs to know to suggest that to them. Or should it be written in? And I think we should change there, the committee, and number 3 should be to the chair, just to be consistent. Otherwise, we'll have to stop and take a vote.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Agreed.
So does that second part of number 3 satisfied in lieu of number 9, or would you still like to
No,
have
number 9 still needs to be there because it could be, for some reason, you don't even go in this order. I don't know what it would be, but it's possible. It also would prevent, if we do go out of order by mistakenly go out of order, then someone can't come in here and argue that we didn't follow our procedures and therefore the actual one wasn't valid. So, but number 3 instead of committee should be, in the second sentence, should be the chair. And then the question is whether or not there needs to be some formal ask. If we're going to have a timer, then it's going to be obvious the time runs out. And then it would prompt me to say, would you like more time? And then they ask and they say yes, and then you're granted the time. That's one way to do it.
Where the answer would be thank you.
Yeah. You're no thanks.
Yeah, so.
Okay, I guess I was driving at, if we're trying to drive protocol and you're asking people to be prepared and this is the process, it's fine. I mean, we just see how it goes. I just don't want people to be like, 12 minutes, you need more time, yeah. And then every single time, it's like, okay. You know, I mean, there are clearly larger cases that are going to take 20, 30, whatever minutes. But it sounds like it's more beneficial when maybe it's a little bit more informal and not so.
I think it is. And I think during the staff meetings, letting the applicant know that, hey, it's a 10-minute thing, because that gets back to what the comment we made, that if they know they've only got so much time, they're a little more careful with how they do the presentation. So I don't think it necessarily needs to be written in the procedures as much as it would be helpful if staff lets the applicant know that this is what we're doing.
Yeah, and with the other boards and commissions that I work with that use this process, I do think it's helpful to have a visual timer that they can see as they're presenting, counting down. Especially, you all maybe don't have this problem as strongly as some of the other boards and commissions do, but especially with the comments of people who are coming to speak and are upset about the situation. A lot of times they will be very redundant of what people said before them and kind of want to go on. And so if you have, it gives the chair a kind of objective thing to point to say, I'm sorry, ma'am, your time is up. We need to go on to the next person and give them a chance to speak.
Yeah, I like that. Gives me a scapegoat.
We could get you a gavel if you want to start beating it, too.
It was about to come out of my mouth. You've already given me a timer, give me a gavel, and I'm good to go.
Honestly, I'm not sure that the Planning Commission chairman doesn't have one of them.
Probably does. No, I don't want a gavel. All right.
So we're inserting the word chair in where the second committee word is in number 3, not the first one. Okay.
Correct. That's right.
Yeah. And then we're adding number 9. And then, okay. Yeah. I like it. I watch city council meetings, and it's the time limits encourage people to be original a lot of times. So.
All right, with those changes and the change to the title being general meeting protocol, make a motion for the committee to adopt these as our general meeting protocol. Heard a second. Do we have any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of adopting, granting the motion, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Seeing none, motion passes. Thanks for your work on this.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Any new business? Do we know how many matters we're going to have next month?
It's going to be about 5, and Bottonell is supposed to be coming back next month.
All right, pack a lunch. Motion to adjourn?
I will just make one brief comment. I just want to say I really enjoy working with this committee and with you all, and I appreciate very much Mayor Megan Berry reappointing me to this board for her service. I have a motion to adjourn.
Got a motion on the floor. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor of adjournment? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Wonderful. Thank you.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information about this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.